But for the record, your name, is that?
I'm Tom.
Tom.
Tom Delventhal.
Okay. Will Brady.
Will Brady.
Yes, sir. Harvey? Thomas?
I got Harvey. Harvey and I know each other. Mary Sue, Andrew, Jim.
And you know me.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Should we shut the door, or are we gonna be
Nobody's here.
mostly open? All right.
Plus the basketball start bouncing down the
Okay.
hallway.
It's 7:31, call to order the May 2023 meeting of the East Haddam Open Space Committee. And minutes we have to approve.
You've got minutes from July of, is that right?
You have not met since July.
Have not met,
2022.
oh, because we had a couple meetings that were workshops because we
Right.
didn't have a quorum.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. I think people got minutes in the mail,
Yep,
Mhm.
second part of the
Yeah.
packet.
right?
I would move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Ayes?
Aye.
That passes.
Who's second?
Correspondence, money. I'm
No
sorry,
bills.
finances.
Bills.
Yeah.
No
We'll
bills.
get there, okay?
No bills. That might help.
Yeah,
Okay.
I take them out when I'm driving. There we go, okay, thank you.
Discussion.
Pardon me?
Discussion.
Discussion on minutes, anything?
No, we already
it's
proved that.
Okay,
And there are no bills.
all right, subjects. I'm sorry, I don't have that
Oh,
in front of me.
okay.
Borrow mine, I need it back.
Okay, we'll share it.
Here.
No bills, discussion.
So if you saw the email or looked in the packet, we actually got the open space grant. We're still batting 1,000. The state has awarded us $243,100. That is actually 65% of the appraised value of the portion that was going to remain in open space. But if you add the additional 20 acres that are going to the town to be for future planning with the middle school, our share now is at 52.7%, which would be $270, $270,900. So not bad. It wasn't 35%. It wasn't, one of the lower years. They actually, anteed up.
I think it was one of the highest.
Yeah, it's the highest. We only got 65%, I think, for the Babcock Road property, the Lena property. That was a bonus then too. So, very good. I was hoping today, and maybe with Harvey here, we can talk about it, is because we have two things that we have. We have, obviously, this has to go to a town vote to be approved, which means it's gotta go to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, then back to a town meeting, and then to a referendum vote. The other thing that we have here is that after this, our bond authorization is really low. $214,000. And when it comes time to sit down with a family and they're doing some planning about what's going to do, the first thing that everybody really says is, show me the money.
Right.
And do you have an account that, can compensate this? And at this point, we're obviously at the end. Now, on the other hand of that spreadsheet I gave everybody, we were able to over 20 years, which I never thought that when we asked for the initial $5 million bond authorization, it'd last 20 years.
Right.
But we were able to take $5 million and with everybody else's cooperation in the way of the town, the land trust, the state of Connecticut, the Nature Conservancy, it's come up to over $18 million worth of funding. So 5 gets 18, we'll take it.
That's a good return on the dollar.
That's a good return. Yeah, it's a good return, and it's thousands of acres also put aside of critical open space. So I have a tentative schedule that says there's going to be public hearings in June, and then a referendum maybe July. On the other hand, the state of Connecticut says that we should close on this property within 18 to 24 months. We've always been much, much quicker than that, getting that done. But in your opinion, Mr. Thomas, do we want to merge with this thing or do we want to stay away from this fray? Because also too, we'd have to update everybody pretty quickly.
Right.
We're already,
It would be, I think, put you in a little bit of a scramble to get everything. Let me back up a sentence. As everybody I suppose knows, the budget vote failed, and the Board of Finance and the first selectman spoke about this a little bit right after the vote failed, and the target date is to have a budget referendum on July 11th. But to get all these bits and pieces together might be a bit of a time crunch. So on that basis, I would think it might, just as a practical matter, make more sense to do it, to deal with the Cronenberg property acceptance and think about additional bond authorization at a separate deal later or in the fall.
which makes sense to me. I just, because the other thing too is you got to write up the calls and everything else, and I don't want to have any project get in a fray if everybody just gets madder and madder at each other and say vote no for everything.
Right.
I think we'll let the dust clear. If that, and then we do it properly too. Because the other question is we haven't come up with a recommendation from this committee to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen as to what we would think is a reasonable number to ask for a bond authorization.
As you might recall, I seem to remember
I'm good, because I can't.
that the Board of Finance has talked about upping the bond authorization, and did not. They seem favorably disposed.
But I turned the tape on. Oh, for God's sakes.
I guess-
We're not on?
I'm not worried about it. It says start recording and it's recording. That's it. I don't give a damn anymore.
So they were favorably disposed and were quite impressed with the fact that over a 20-year period, it turns out that you could take the $5 million and acquire $18 million worth of parcels. They thought they'd like to get that deal at their money market.
Yeah, no, that part they were good with that meeting. But I was just thinking from this part, I mean, we bounced back, 2.5, 2, it doesn't have to be 5 again. That's, if you take Glastonbury, they went out and started with 3, and then I think 3 times over now they've added to it. Million one time, 2 million, they've bounced it around. So I'm not sure if there's I mean, realistically, what's out there, if you have 2 million in the bank and you've got DEP on the grant side of it, that's a heck of an acquisition. Even if something major came in front of us.
Well, the other thing is the DEP has opened us a new grant for the fall.
I know. Yep.
And apparently with the different kinds of money they're having, they're trying to get this 65% matching grants wherever they can do that, as long as the land qualifies. So I would think that if we could promote that, we'd probably have a decent chance of getting a bond issue passed.
Now, would you be thinking of a town vote in a separate referendum subsequent to the budget vote, or in the next general election in November?
No, if we're gonna, there's no sense in having this poor person wait any longer. I mean, DEP was a little late, we waited for the DEP to put the grant in, the family's patiently been waiting there. I'd say that just a separate item, because we're not gonna vote on anything again until,
November.
that's just waiting too long.
We have.
That's another little firestorm I never wanna get involved in, general elections. I really do like keeping our, on an
Well,
island.
the only reason I asked that is because there was some criticism of the last open space vote that we took, because it was a referendum vote and not at the general election, and our turnouts at referendums aren't really overwhelming. So
I could say that we probably had more people vote for the open space referendum than they did for this last budget vote.
About right.
okay, well,
Historically, that's always been a bigger draw, and I believe historically it works if when we have presented our subject to the public, that is the topic that we're talking about, and that's the topic that's getting addressed, and not mixing it with other, not even just apples and oranges, more like apples and, a side of beef,
Well, the other thing is when, if we have that referendum in the summertime, we get more people involved, because you have all these people with these summer homes, Lake Hayward and the other lakes, and I think they help contribute to the volume of votes we got last time.
They were advocates the last time.
Yeah.
Very much so. They've been, several times they've been advocates.
Whereas you do it in October, November, they're all back in other places, and they're not gonna come here for a vote.
But then between now and that vote, we would have to have BOF come in and say, yes, we agree to X number of dollars for what? I'd go 5 million if we could, but I don't know if that's what's considered sustainable. And if we go with two and that gets used and people like with Glastonbury says, oh, well, here's another two.
That's how some of the other towns have approached it.
Yeah.
They've, they still have money in the bank
Right.
to show that they can participate in an open space acquisition.
And I don't
It was 2003. When we asked for the 5 million, we really thought, at best it'd last us 10 years.
Yeah.
Really did. Also, too, back then, we weren't always getting DEP contributions. So a lot of times we were running it on our own, like we did with the Rose Farm
Mhm.
and the two Lions pieces, Pizzini and Bear. Those things we ran on our own. So those were out of our pocket with no additional funding. So lately we've been kind of,
Which also says to Deep that, hey, we're committed to the.
Yeah.
to our goal.
so is there a number that we should plug in there so at least we can start the presentation?
Well, Harvey, what do you think from the finance point of view?
Each year before the budget process gets completed, the Board of Finance says, here's the budget we're recommending. We invite in a fellow named Bill Lindsay, not that that matters, and he gives us a pretty thorough rundown of where you stand with respect to bonding. Right, you got this much outstanding bonds, and they're going down year by year. And so, what additional capacity do you have to bond? Because you want to make sure you don't get yourself in hot water that way. We didn't directly address this in March. Suppose there was an additional $5 million of open space bonding, but it never happens that way, right? This 5 million was spread out over 20 years. And so the amount that you'd have to figure in is, maybe you say, well, next time around, we're gonna have to consider that there's an extra million to bond
Right.
the next time we issue bonds or so. So I don't think that's a big problem. I mean, that's only my opinion, and the rest of the Board of Finance will certainly have an opinion, but I don't think it's a big
You
problem.
mean 6 million? Or you say another million? Is that what?
No, that, suppose that the voters, that you proposed 5 million additional new
Right.
bonding authority, and the next time the town decides it makes sense to issue bonds for, I don't know what, repairs to the middles, I'm making this up,
Right.
by way of example, suppose not quite, the Company 2 firehouse, and a new library. Now we're gonna have to issue some bonds.
Right.
Okay, so by then, maybe the open space will have $1 million worth within 2 years from now that that we've spent
Right.
and makes sense to bond for. It's a small drop in the bucket compared to all the other things that we bond for. Does that help?
And when you
Yeah.
do the authorization for the bond, you're not actually
You're not borrowing,
borrowing that money at that point in time.
that is correct, right?
So you can borrow it when interest rates are better to your advantage.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It just gets rolled into the other bonding that the town does.
Oh, it's not separate. It's just when there's things, they group them together.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And sometimes they short-term note them
Right.
and then bind them together.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
But, no, it's accounted for separately, but
Right,
the cost of going out a bond is pretty significant. You got attorneys
Right.
and the guys who peddle bonds don't do it for nothing.
Right.
And so, it makes no economic sense to go out and bond for $1 million.
Right.
You want a bond for 13 million, we can talk about it.
Right. So you lump them together.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is another reason why, say, going for 5 rather than 2 makes more sense. Theoretically, if you're, and we're not even bonding, we're just asking for the commitments to be able to bond, right?
Sometime in the future.
When the townspeople decide it's in everyone's interest to actually do the purchase with
Right.
the bonding.
Right. But then we're bonding for like $270,000 or.
As it turns out, I will be meeting with the chairwoman of the Board of Finance tomorrow.
Okay.
And the whole Board of Finance will be meeting Wednesday and Thursday evening. Maybe we only need Wednesday, maybe we can get this done in one meeting. We don't have to make a decision whether it's 2 million, 2.5, 5 million tonight.
Well, I mean, no, we don't, but maybe you
what-
wanted to hedge them out and feel where their feelings are and.
Right, that's what I was gonna say is,
Yep.
let me put my toe in the water a little bit, if you don't mind. And I'll let Jim know what I hear
Yeah.
as
'Cause
soon as I hear it.
I just, to be honest with you, I just need to have something so that when we sit down with a family and say, yeah, we're still committed, we're still in the game. You know, because that is, you know, I wanna say 4 out of 5 times, well, what's your financial capabilities? Well, let me show you what we've done. And I slide the sheet out and say, this is what's left in the bond authorization. After we've got the appraisal, and then they go, oh, okay. And just like this family, they weren't aware of it because they don't live in town and they didn't know, and they've, you know, said, okay. You know. Now, it's not like, okay, we have to go on a fundraising campaign to get it all together. So, it's a very, very good tool. And like I said, if it was, you know, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, you know, as long as it's something and we, you know, keep it going. And I've kind of looked at Glastonbury and said, okay, that's what they're doing. Now, of course, they have to because the cost of land up there is 3 times ours, easily.
But I would also think that the referendum for the bond should be separate from some of this other stuff.
You mean the budget? But if we go to vote for the open space piece and the referendum, it should be question
Right.
1 or 2.
Right,
That, yeah.
but separate from anything else that's going on in town.
It probably would be better. And it'd be like it is, if they're already set and scheduled, we're not gonna be able to ramp it up and get all the things in line properly. That sounds good. You can test the waters tomorrow.
So let me run my mouth another couple of sentences. If in talking tomorrow and on Wednesday evening, it looks like, you know, such and such a number would fly, right? We can always, everybody wants another meeting. We can always have a special meeting of this group to
Yep,
bless it.
yep.
Or could we just say that,
Yeah, I think, Mary, just to make it official, the official recommendation was made at a duly held meeting and
right.
That makes
But,
sense.
but could it be that we would authorize up to this amount of money, but not more than? Or that gets too wishy-washy?
Yeah.
Are we
Okay.
talking
Yeah.
about making a decision like that tonight, or
No,
next
no,
month?
Well,
I
I was
advise you
thinking
to just,
if it
let's,
keeps
let's
you
get,
from another meeting,
Mhm,
let's
right,
get the
to give them
feedback,
some
yeah.
leeway,
right,
but to get the feedback first.
yeah. No, that makes
Okay,
And the only thing else I had is that Allison just sent me the package, back, saying, for the, giving us the time for Kronberg.
Right.
And believe it or not, they actually go out and check all our places, every one of the sites. And she came back with that we do have to finish the trails at Lower Wellington, so I've informed the Conservation Commission of that. We gotta shore up the survey all the way on the east boundary before we create a trail, sure it's not in somebody else's property. And then, there was a sign out in Zelnitsky, but it got stolen again.
Hmm.
Cause they had the DEP logo and all that stuff on it. Gone again. Somebody must like it. I can't help it, and the other one was, she said the north part for the, Dean easement,
Mhm.
it's not quite it's a grass parking area. It doesn't look established, so she couldn't make hide in her hair of it, even though it's a park here, I get it, they're looking for, so we can fix that. I can have Public Works fix that, but, I think that's the second time the Zelnicki sign's disappeared. And there's no living relatives around either, so it's, the only one, do you know who's the relatives? The guy that owns the property down the road. He said that was his mother's property. I can't think of his name right now, but he doesn't, his last name's not Zelnicki.
On
so-
Gates, or?
No, this is all the way out on the Salem town line,
Oh, okay,
that little 19-acre piece.
yep,
So it's twice it's disappeared. Timing's wonderful, She comes out to look at it. But it's gotta be between East Haddam Land Trust and East Haddam, it's gotta be 2 days of driving around looking at all these things. Has to be.
Mm-hmm.
But they did. So,
So Lord Wellington needs trails, the Zelda
Yep.
needs a new sign, and the Dean property needs a better parking spot.
yeah, more established parking. Yep. Nothing overwhelming that we can't accomplish. That's all I have. I don't have any properties to discuss to go into executive session unless somebody else does.
I'm not,
Nobody's stepped to the plate lately, so. Okay.
When last this group has talked about re-upping the bond before, and in the process or during that discussion or in preparation for it, you put together sort of a dog and pony show, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just really a question of upping the numbers, refreshing the numbers, and reprinting.
Actually, this sheet's
Yeah,
I made the same presentation to the East Haddam Land Trust, or not the East Haddam Land Trust, East Haddam Fish and Game last fall.
Mm.
And kind of a, refresher course when they laughed at me and said we were crazy when they thought we were gonna go for a bond authorization and ever buy any land, because at the time they were correct, we didn't own anything. So. The mapping was a wonderful little tool for them. They really liked that, so.
I think it's especially useful to show how much we as a town were able to cobble together before the 5 million authorization too.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, so that's the running account. Yep.
And I think that now from what I gathered, that the state really wants to, I won't say get rid of, but dole out money for conservation right now, because apparently they have money to do that.
Right,
And their goal, what was 23 or 25%
of whole cover for the state.
state,
right?
and
Yeah, right.
they haven't reached that goal, so I think they've got some
Still
extra.
got a ways to go.
I think that since they've gotten some extra money now, they wanna kinda up that
Mhm.
process. As long as it meets their standards.
That state money that can also be used for, I mean, it's a tiny amount of money, but, comparison to buying the land, but, trail maintenance and that sort of
I think that's a different
That's a
fund.
different fund, right?
whole different fund balance. Yep.
But it's still deep.
Still deep, different division.
But they're
Yep.
different.
Is that a grant process too?
Oh, yeah. I just got $32,000 for it.
Yeah.
For,
I think I know that.
for design, for the trail from, the Four Corners all the way out the River Road.
Right.
Right.
That's just design. Bike trail.
Yeah, that's a separate fund for recreation and something fund.
I think we're gonna be at a point where what we also have to, might do is point out to people that we're doing this not just for ourselves, but for what people's needs are gonna be 100 years from now. Assuming we haven't gone underwater.
Well, we're got a good elevation, so.
Right. The airport might be gone, but,
But I think there's seems to be a push on the state to develop not only the open space and the parks and stuff,
Right.
but trails and activities to get people out and using these facilities. So I think
Right.
they've given some more money to,
Well, also too, they were finding out that some of these places were acquired and then never used.
right,
They're not exactly thrilled,
right.
you know?
Which is why they're checking all the properties so closely, and all of our parking is being,
I thought it was like parking this big deal, and I'm like,
parking's a very big deal.
I said, Allison, I said, it's a connective park. It goes from the town to the land trust, to the land trust, to a town. I said,
yeah.
we all get to use the same thing. She goes, all right, let me sleep on that. I said, you can't create, if they're connective trails, you don't need to create,
Right.
you know? So, they are, I gotta give them credit, they're checking.
And by the way, with this new purchase authorization, will that be able to extend the middle school trails and the bike trails into more land
Yeah,
Which
everything
is
but the fields itself.
with the field?
And that, you know, the thing about that piece is, most of the trails are there. There's only like one or two connective sections over,
Right.
but Don, through all these years of horseback riding throughout there, has gotten the trails wide open. So and the only other thing that's gotta happen is from North Moodus Road in,
Right,
we've gotta put at least 2 parking spots off of North Moodus Road so that
right,
that group can make their way
right.
into it.
But I think that also, in addition to the grant for the open spaces, maybe to be able to then, on top of that, get the grant to extend those recreation trails in, to have more access for more people.
I think of some of the grants that they've been given the past few years where they're basically using open space funds for doing that in urban areas where they're making sort of little park things.
That's still under the DEP
Could we
Trails
kinda
grant.
like do something like that? with-
Well, no, we'd have to put it in a separate, the Trails Grant program. I mean, you know, that, and a lot of times you don't dip into it for little stuff. You dip it in for like the 8 Mile River dipped into it, I think, to do that bridge.
Okay, right.
You know, something that's gonna really hit the budget, you know, that's what you wanna do. Or like this one here, I mean, you know, I'm looking at $40,000 to go down a state highway and figure out property lines, topography, access, that's just the planning. And, you know, then the numbers to get the whole thing installed, that's another whole grant program too, because,
And that's kind of what they're looking at right now.
well, and also too, the fact that when you publicize these routes as being
Right,
cycle paths, yet there's not enough shoulder, and there's not, you know, there's just nothing there. There's not even the signage, yet they're published, you know, Route 82 and 149. For decades have been published as, you know, wonderful cycling routes. Yet they don't have the signage, they don't have the little bit of space. There's nothing, so we're looking to improve that too.
well, now that they'll have a little, maybe walkway as part of the bridge,
Hey, that only took 20-something years.
yeah.
It'll happen
That extends you like from one
26 years.
open
26.
space into another side of the river, yeah. That will be a big boost,
I don't know.
though.
I wouldn't go across that with a bike again. I did it once. That was enough. And I used to walk, but for some reason, when I was a little kid, I used to walk across it to get a ride to go play baseball in the summer, and nightmare.
Listen, the way they have that one-way traffic, I get kind of leery even going across in a car.
Yeah,
They have really
you're boxed in.
boxed you in a little bit, especially when you see that crane moving overhead over your car. But, okay,
One thing I just think, as it relates to, when we're doing the show, so to speak, is, for the public that thinks that all we've got for this is, oh, is that all the town has? You know, remind them how much, like you
Well,
said, land trust parcels have gone.
That's why I did the whole
Entire-
write-up of
yeah.
everybody.
Right.
It's an everybody
I
thing.
think that's
So that
great.
write-up covers
Useful to have, but,
all the pieces. Yep.
do we have anything else for discussion?
so we haven't actually set any proposed dates yet. And until Harvey kind of gets back to us.
Yep.
All righty,
But we're kind of looking at summer.
Yeah. End of
Yeah.
August wouldn't hurt my feelings.
right.
Get that entire Lake Hayward crew right down.
Anybody have anything else to add to our discussion?
No, just the spelling of my last name.
Uh-oh.
Compagno.
Yeah, it's, with an O at the end?
Yeah.
Did you give Susan your email and all that?
Yeah,
That all
yes,
came?
Yeah, she's been
Okay.
emailing me.
Okay, good.
Oh, instead of not, no.
To know, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Move we adjourn?
I'll entertain a second.
Second,
I on the second, sir, but, okay.